Molly the dog. Title: Molly the dog. At 12 years old, Summer believed her heart was a perfect, sun-warmed stone, smooth and whole. That was before Molly. The moment the brown and white German Shepherd puppy, no bigger than her own two hands, was placed in her arms, Summer's heart cracked open to make room. Molly, with her paws that were too big for her body and a tail that whipped back and forth like a frantic metronome, became the center of Summer's world. Molly was shadow and sunshine. She was obedient, learning, sit, and stay, before she'd even learned the full scope of her own lanky legs. She was friendly, greeting every rustling leaf with a curious sniff and every person with a happy, panting grin. There was only one shadow in Molly's sunny disposition, Semyon, Summer's dad. For reasons Molly couldn't explain, the deep, calm voice of the 38-year-old man made her flatten her ears and tuck her tail. Perhaps it was his sheer size, or the way his presence commanded a room, but a simple walk to the park was a mixture of joy for Summer and trepidation for Molly. Hyde Park was the usual destination. It was there they met Sule, Semyon's friend, and his dog, Monch. Where Molly was a gentle stream, Monch was a raging river. Sule, 37, had trained his dog for aggression, mistaking violence for strength. Monch, a powerful beast with fur like coal dust, would inevitably bully the smaller Molly. He would steal her ball, knock her over with a clumsy, heavy pounce, and snarl over shared water bowls. Sule would laugh it off. "He's just playing," he'd say, as Semyon frowned, watching Molly cower. Over 2 years, the gentle stream was polluted. The constant taunting and brawling with Monch chipped away at Molly's sweet nature. She learned that to survive, she had to be tough. The rockhousing became her normal. The once friendly puppy grew into a dog with bad manners, her playful nips turning into hard, possessive bites. The first time she broke Summer's skin was during a game of fetch. Her jaw, strengthened by tussles with Monch, clamped down on Summer's hand, leaving a constellation of deep, purple bruises. Semyon was furious, not at Molly, but at the danger she posed to his daughter. "This is not who she is," he'd argue, but the evidence was on Summer's arms and legs. One afternoon, after a particularly harsh bite that made Summer cry, Semyon's patience snapped. He led Molly to the back garden, a space usually filled with laughter and games, and left her there. "You can stay out here until you remember how to be part of this family," he said, his voice like stone. For 2 days, Molly lived in the garden, her world shrinking to a patch of grass. She barked, a lonely, desperate sound that carried down the quiet street of Nightingale Lane. It was a cry that was heard by the wrong ears. In a nearby house, a woman named Marta, 24, listened with predatory interest. "She sounds like a good size," she said to her partner, Edmund, 28. "Go and get her." Answer. As dusk fell, Edmund scaled the garden wall. Molly, hearing the thud, thought her punishment was over. She bounded forward, tail wagging, only to be met with a rough hand and a sack pulled roughly over her head. The world went dark. The next morning, Summer begged to let Molly in. Semyon, his anger cooled by a sleepless night of worry, went to the garden to fetch her. He found only empty space and a disturbed patch of earth. Molly was gone. When he told his daughter, the sun fell out of Summer's sky. Her tears were a torrent of grief and guilt. Semyon held her, a promise solidifying in his heart. "I will do everything," he vowed, to find her. What Semyon and Summer did not know was that they were up against a darkness they couldn't imagine. Edmund and Marta weren't just thieves. They were monsters who sold dogs for their meat. In their squalid house, Molly was thrown into a cramped, filthy room with about 20 other dogs. Over the next few days, she watched, horrified, as dogs were taken away and returned no more. The air was thick with the scent of fear and death. The sight broke something in Molly, then remade it. The aggressive habits learned from Monch vanished, replaced by a primal, terror-fueled obedience. The better her behavior, the more they might like her, the longer she might live. But every time she tried to be meek, to impress them with a quiet sit or a gentle lick, Edmund or Marta would strike her on the head for no reason at all. She wasn't alone. 4 other dogs remained. Bola, a scruffy terrier, Pootie, a small, whimpering whippet, Dex, a bony boxer, and Groti, a cowed yellow Labrador. Molly's first plan was escape. She'd spotted a small hole near the window, a sliver of hope. But she was too big. They were all too big. Marta, ever the businesswoman, had a new plan. We need more stock, she told Edmund. Let's breed her. Get Groti to do it. Edmund forced the two dogs together. 2 weeks later, a quiet certainty settled in Molly's belly. She was pregnant. The life inside her was not one of joy, but of desperate purpose. She had to save herself, and now, her puppies. Then came the phone call. A man named John, a regular customer, needed 2 large dogs for slaughter now and was willing to pay a fortune. Marta and Edmund looked at their remaining dogs. They were all too small, except for Molly, who they were saving for her litter. Let's go hunting, Marta said. Back to that street, Nightingale Lane. There must be other big dogs there. They climbed into the green van and drove back, parking near Hyde Park. At that exact moment, Semyon and Summer were also walking towards the park, clinging to a desperate hope that they might find some clue. And, as fate would have it, Sule had just arrived, unclipping Monch's lead to let him run free. Marta's eyes gleamed. There. That one. He's perfect. While Semyon was distracted, scanning the horizon, Edmund crept towards Monch. In one swift, brutal motion, he threw a heavy sack over the dog's head. Monch's furious, muffled bark was cut short as they dragged him away. Semyon saw it. The green van, the struggling sack. Summer. Find Sule. Tell him Monch has been kidnapped. He yelled, his voice sharp with adrenaline. As Summer ran, Semyon's eyes locked on a bicycle left on the path. He mounted it, his legs pumping furiously, and chased the van through the city streets. He followed him to a decrepit house on the edge of town. He memorized the address, ducked behind a wall, and phoned the authorities, his voice breathless as he explained the dog napping and his suspicions. When the police arrived, they didn't knock. They burst through the door, finding a scene of unimaginable cruelty. They found the other dogs, Bola, Pootie, Dex, and a very pregnant Molly, caged and terrified. They found the evidence of the slaughter operation. And they found Monch, bruised but alive. The authorities handed Monch back to a shaken and bewildered Sule. Then, an officer led a trembling Molly out. When her eyes met Semyon's, her tail gave a weak, hopeful wag. And then she saw Summer. Summer's shriek of joy was the only sound that mattered. She threw her arms around Molly's neck, burying her face in her familiar fur, crying tears of relief this time. Thank you, Dad, she whispered. Thank you. Edmund and Myrta would go to jail for a long, long time. A few weeks later, in the warm safety of her own home, Molly gave birth to 5 beautiful puppies. The aggression was gone, the fear was fading, replaced by a deep, maternal calm. The world had been cruel, but her final chapter would be one of peace. On sunny afternoons, Molly and her 5 pups would romp in Hyde Park with a deliriously happy Summer. Semyon would watch, his heart finally at ease. Sometimes, from a distance, they would see Sule walking Monch, but he never unleashed him in the park again. The memory was too raw. He kept him safe in his own garden. For Semyon, Summer, and Molly, however, the park was reclaimed. It was their place once more, a place of joy, of healing, and of the unbreakable bond between a girl and her dog. The end. Story by Kayode Ike.